Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maureen Barry, the new Vice President for Advancement at Regis High School, and the proud mother of an alum class of 21. I have some fellow 21 friends here in the room. I have the pleasure of serving as MC for this evening. Now, we will hear from Regis students who will lead us in the alma mater. Please join us, stand and join us in singing. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Excellent, boys. Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining in. Thank you all for joining us for this very special 2023 Deo et Patriae reception. It is an honor to be here with you all this evening. Each of you present is a valued member of our Regis community, who makes a tremendous impact on all that we do at Regis. I am truly grateful for your support and your shared love for Regis. Please join me in welcoming our special guests tonight. Judge Keenan, class of 47, his wife Diane, joining us in the audience, and Bill Craco, sitting next to Judge Keenan, class of 82. Although 35 years is between them in graduation year, they share the values that come with the gift of a Regis education, being men for others. You will be hearing shortly from Bill, who will talk about Judge Keenan's remarkable career. I also welcome Judge Keenan's special guests who are sitting here in the front row. Thank you for joining us as well. Being just 2 months into my role at Regis as Vice President for Advancement, and although a member of the community for several years before, it inspires me how amazingly supportive this community is. As the parent of a young alum, I know firsthand the impact on my son and our family, how strong the bonds are, and all that a Regis education means for our boys. Regis is a true gift for all of us. Your generous support and care for Regis over many years is truly appreciated, as it has made a meaningful impact on the students, alums, and all their lives and their education. One of the most important reasons for us to gather tonight is to thank you all for your commitment to Regis, which allows us to maintain our very unique tuition-free education for 530 boys each year. Last year's annual fund raised $9.6 million. The fiscal year 24 annual fund launched 1 week ago, and we've already surpassed the $1 million mark. Thank you all very much. This is due to your continued and ongoing generosity. None of this would be possible without the support of our community, and especially the generous support of all of you who are with us tonight. Alumni and their spouses, give the women credit as well. Alumni parents, the current parent community, and friends of Regis. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are also coming together to express gratitude to our Deo honoree, Judge John F. Keenan, class of 47. Judge Keenan gave his life to serve others, especially at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and then for decades as a district judge for the Southern District of New York. Judge Keenan isn't only dedicated to the greater good, but to being a mentor to those who work with him. He has had a number of Regis alums work as clerks and interns over many, many years. A few of those who are here tonight. Many of you. He guided them through that early part of their career and beyond. He is, in every possible respect, a man for others. Please join me in congratulating Judge Keenan. Now it is my honor to introduce Reverend Arthur C. Bender, Regis class of 67, and a previous Deo at Patriae honoree who will lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Lord our God, you are the source of all that is good. We praise you, we thank you for the many ways by which you have blessed and continue to bless the work that is Regis High School. We thank you for the great generosity of so many alumni and friends over the years, and especially for the founding family to whom we owe so much. As we gather this evening, we ask you to continue to be mindful of the entire Regis community, students and faculty and staff, alumni, parents, and friends. May your love guide and protect us always. We ask you to send your blessing upon us as we gather this evening. Bless the food and the fellowship that we share, and we make our prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Father Bender. It is my pleasure to introduce Bill Craco, class of 82. Bill graduated from Williams College and went on to law school at Fordham Law. Immediately after law school, Bill began his legal career as a clerk in Judge Keenan's chambers in the Southern District of New York. Please join me in welcoming Bill.
Good evening, and thank you all. Fair warning requires me just to alert you all that when discussing John Keenan on past occasions, I've been known to get somewhat choked up. If that happens here, it didn't happen in the dry run, so I think we're fine. I think we're fine tonight. But excuse me, and you'll understand a little bit when I describe the man to you why that happened to me. So I've been blessed during my life with two tremendous privileges and opportunities that have really transformed and changed the course of my life. The first was the precious gift of a Regis education. The second gift that changed the course of my life was an opportunity to work as a law clerk for one of Regis's most distinguished graduates, Judge John F. Keenan, a man I've been profoundly lucky to have as a treasured mentor, guide, and friend for 35 years. I'm honored to introduce him here tonight and to tell you briefly about this extraordinary Regian. Judge Keenan has had an exceptional career, which, except for 4 months at a private firm in the 1950s, has been devoted entirely to public service and the pursuit of justice. After graduating from Regis, where he was the captain of the swim team, Judge Keenan attended Manhattan College and Fordham Law School. After he graduated from law school in 1954, speaking in the microphone? Oh, okay, there we go. Exactly. You see, I went to Regis, but I'm still not that bright. It took a room full of people in the back frantically signaling towards me. Sorry about that. After Judge Keenan graduated from law school in 1954, he served for 2 years in the Army Security Agency and was stationed in Tokyo during the Korean War. In 1956, Judge Keenan joined the New York County District Attorney's Office under the legendary leadership of Frank Hogan, and he served in the DA's office for 20 years. He tried scores of cases and served as the head of the Felony Trial Bureau, the chief of the Homicide Bureau, the administrative assistant district attorney, and finally the chief assistant district attorney. It was at the Manhattan DA's office that Judge Keenan began to earn his well-deserved and widely recognized reputation as an extraordinary trial lawyer. One of Judge Keenan's most well-known cases while he was at the district attorney's office involved the complex investigation and prosecution of the 1963 murders of 2 young career women in an apartment only a few blocks from Regis. The case received tremendous media attention, was the subject of several books, and was even the inspiration for the pilot episode of the Kojak television series. In one of the books about the case, the author described John Keenan as follows, quote, "Though not physically imposing, in fact, slight of stature with a receding hairline, Keenan was nevertheless intellectually intimidating in the courtroom, virtually magical in his ability to control the tempo and rhythm of a trial. He had a captivating presence and had a well-earned reputation as one of the best trial lawyers in the country. After a brief stint in the Queens DA's office, John Keenan returned to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, where he served with distinction under Robert Morgenthau. Judge Keenan then distinguished himself in other roles. He held gubernatorial and mayoral appointments, including special prosecutor for corruption in New York City, chairman and president of the Off-Track Betting Corporation, criminal justice coordinator in New York City, all before being appointed by President Ronald Reagan to be a judge on the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, the busiest and the most influential district court in the nation. When Judge Keenan's nomination to the bench was publicly announced in July 1983, the New York Times ran an article in which then District Attorney Morgenthau described Judge Keenan as, quote, an outstanding trial lawyer and a super guy, very calm and one of the few first-rate trial lawyers without a huge ego, close quote. During his 40 years of distinguished service on the bench, Judge Keenan earned a reputation as one of the finest trial judges in the country. In 1994, Chief Justice Rehnquist appointed him to serve on the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Judge Keenan served with distinction for 7 years on this important panel, which has the difficult task of helping to protect the security of the nation as well as the liberty of its citizens. Among the more notable trials that Judge Keenan conducted while a judge on the Southern District bench was an 8-month trial of 13 members of the Colombo crime family, led by Carmine the Snake Persico. He presided over the trial of former Miss America Bess Meyerson, the former First Lady of the Philippines Imelda Marcos, and international arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi. In 2005, after all of the judges of the Federal District Court in Chicago had been recused from a case in which the defendant was accused of trying to blow up the federal courthouse in Chicago, Judge Keenan was hand-selected to fly to Chicago and try the case there. And through his efforts, a fair trial under very difficult circumstances was rendered to a defendant, and a fair outcome was achieved. Judge Keenan was unquestionably an absolutely superb federal judge, scrupulously fair, diligent, open-minded, and respectful of everyone who appeared before him. He was often sought out by his colleagues on the Southern District bench for his counsel, particularly on criminal matters. But those of us who have been lucky enough to have had the privilege to work for him as law clerks, courthouse staff, assistant district attorneys, know him as an incredibly kind, thoughtful, funny, and supportive boss and mentor. Judge Keenan goes out of his ways to support his law clerks and celebrate their accomplishments, no matter how big or small. So I'll start with a small one, because it's mine. For example, during the first year of my 2-year clerkship with the judge, I was anxiously awaiting the results of the New York bar exam. In those days, and some of you might not remember this, but the bar exam results came in things called letters, which were sent to things called mailboxes. And I asked the judge if I could leave chambers to go home and collect the results of the bar exam. He told me I could, and asked me to come back and report on the results. He was presiding over a 5-defendant criminal trial at the time. I did pass the bar exam, and I snuck into the side of the courtroom, and from outside of the view of the jury, gave a thumbs up sign. Judge Keenan wouldn't have this. Do you remember this story, Judge? Okay. Judge Keenan wouldn't have it, called me over to the bench, grabbed my hand to shake it, pulled me up on the bench, and then said, I want to go off the record. This is my law clerk, Mr. Bill Craco, and he just passed the bar exam on the first try. And that's, he stopped the trial and announced this, and that's what the jury did. The jury clapped, and the defense lawyers clapped, and then there was a pause, and the comment was translated for the defendants who didn't speak English and had headphones in, and they, after a pause, then the 5 of them clapped. Now, I made hundreds of dopey mistakes while I worked for the judge, and he was always extraordinarily kind and patient. It says a lot about the man, I think, and about the nature of his concerns for his clerk, that I think if I tell you one example of the only time that I can remember that Judge Keenan was visibly furious with me. After I finished my clerkship, I went with another Southern District law clerk on a 8-week trip to Australia and New Zealand, and had a terrific time. And when I came back, the judge invited me to go down to Forlini's to have lunch with the judge and his longtime administrative assistant to hear about my trip. And I told him about Ayers Rock and the Great Barrier Reef, and then I mentioned, not thinking that it would be controversial, that I had an opportunity in New Zealand to go bungee jumping off of a bridge. His face turned absolutely stony, and he said, "You did what?" He said, "Why would you do a thing like that?" He said, "I thought you were a smart kid." Then he leaned up across the table and he said, "Did you think of your family when you did that? Did you think about your mother?" And that's as mad as I've ever seen him. When I was at Regis, Father Charlie Byrne told us that a critical mission of Regis was to form Christian gentlemen who would go out in the world and seek to be of service. Through his remarkable career of service, John Keenan has been the living embodiment of the values that Regis seeks to instill into its graduates. So on behalf of myself and all of Judge Keenan's former law clerks, it is my honor to introduce our boss, our mentor, our friend, and an outstanding Christian gentleman, Judge John F. Keenan.
Sit down, please. Thank you. Thank you all.
Just pivot the mic for you, Judge. I'm just bringing the mic a
Okay,
little
good,
more.
Bill. Thank you again, all of you. And thank you for standing. I get very nervous when I'm introduced and people stand up because I'm afraid that they're all about to leave before I get a chance to talk. And something like that actually, very close to that, actually happened to me.
I'm just going to, you know what, how about if I just hold it for you?
I'll hold it.
It doesn't tilt. Oh, it does tilt. Again, I went to Regis, yeah.
Thank God Bill's legal ability exceeds his and mine mechanical ability.
Is this good?
In any event, as I was starting to say, I get nervous when people get up when I'm about to speak because I'm afraid they're leaving. And something close to that actually happened to me when I was running the Off-Track Betting Corporation. There was this meeting of the horse racing industry, of the leaders of it, down in Florida at this beautiful hotel. And there was this morning where there were to be 4 speakers, and I was the 4th speaker.
You're getting up one more request, Judge.
And the room was crowded. It was the ballroom at a hotel, and there were about 150, 200 people there. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and the room overlooked the 18th hole of the golf course, the green of the 18th. And so the first fellow speaks, and about 2/3 of the people, maybe 3/4, get up and leave after he speaks. Then the second fellow speaks, and everybody but one gets up and leaves after he talks. So there's one guy in the audience down where Father Deveron is, and I look at him and I say, "Thank you very much, sir, for staying and listening to me." He says, "Thanks hell, I'm the 4th speaker." So, Father Deveron, I look forward to your remarks, and it was really a pleasure to meet you. Ms. Barry and Father Bender, whom I have not met, and Bill Craco. Bill, your remarks were wonderful. If my mother were alive, she would have believed them. And if my father were alive, he would have wished they were true. And what you said, Bill, reminded me of something that Winston Churchill allegedly said. Occasionally, he stumbled over the truth, but picked himself up as though nothing had happened. And talking about famous people, when Al Smith was governor of New York back in the 1920s, he was invited to address the inmates at Sing Sing prison up in Ossining. The governor was a true gentleman, as I'm sure you have read about, and he didn't want to offend anybody in the assembly of convicts that was there before him as he was about to speak. But he knew that he could not begin his remarks, as he often did, by saying, "My fellow Democrats," nor could he say, "My dear friends." All he could think of was, "I am so glad you are all here." And I am. I'm glad you're all here. In thinking about my remarks tonight, I was reminded of some advice the great William Hughes Mulligan, who was Dean of Fordham Law School for many years, and who was a great judge of the court, the Judge Rena Radji, who graces us with her presence, the young lady right there in the front row, who's a dear friend. Mulligan was on the same court as Judge Radji. Mulligan told me, "Start off, John, with the story of the cross-eyed javelin thrower, who, whenever he came into the arena, he looked around at the audience and he was poised to hurl his javelin." He said, then the javelin thrower would stop with the javelin up where Tom Brady used to hold the ball before he threw it. and he was poised to hurl the javelin, he would stop, raise the weapon, and immediately get the attention, because he was cross-eyed, of everybody in the Coliseum. That'll help with your audience, Mulligan said. And being at a Regis fair made me think of examinations. And there's a story about this Irish engineer named Murphy. He applied for an engineering position at an Irish firm which was based in Dublin. There was an American also who applied for the same job. Both applicants having the same qualifications were asked by the department manager to take a test. At the end of the test, both men had only missed one of the questions, which was question number 5. The manager and the other bosses at the company decided to pick the American for the job. The manager went to Murphy and told him that the American got the job, not Murphy. Murphy asked the manager, "And why would you be doing that? We both got 9 questions correct. This being Ireland and me being Irish, I should get the job." The manager looked at him and replied, "We made the decision not on the correct answers, but rather on the answer that you missed." Murphy then asked, "And just how would that be correct? How would one incorrect answer be better than the other?" The manager replied, "That was very easy. The American put down for answer number 5, 'I don't know.' And you put down, 'Neither do I.'" Now, if that had happened in New York, I can tell you, Bill, it was only 39 years on the federal court. Now it's 40, but I'm inactive now completely. But as Judge Raji would tell you, and as Judge John Cotel, a Regis man who was here in the audience, who was a judge on our court on the Southern District of New York, as both of them would have told you, if Murphy sued for employment discrimination in New York, he probably would have won. And some funny things happen in the courthouse downtown. I always thought, when I was practicing in the state primarily, that federal court was always very distinguished, very proper, and sort of stiff. Well, this is a true story. This one is 100% true. And I'm going to use the name of the judge who was deceased, because he used to tell the story on himself, so I can use his name, and he used to tell it frequently whenever he'd speak. On March 4th, 1987, no less a publication than the New York Times ran a story about the sentencing proclivities of the judges then sitting in the federal court in the district in Manhattan. 5 of us were viewed as quite lenient. 5 of us were viewed as quite harsh or strict. But the story went on to gratuitously state, quote, now I'm quoting from the New York Times, and some judges are regarded as difficult to rank because lawyers find them to be unpredictable, even erratic, a label frequently given to Kevin Thomas Duffy. That was the judge who sadly has passed on. Judge Duffy used to live up in Pelham, but he'd take the subway down from the first stop up in the Bronx in Pelham, and he read the story on the way to work. When he got to Foley Square, he didn't go to his chambers. He went right to the press room in 40 Center Street. And he went up to the desk of the reporter who had authored the story. Duffy was a big man. He was about 6'3", 6'4". He looked like a tight end on a team, or had been a tight end. And the reporter was at his desk and wasn't a big fella. Duffy looks at the guy and says to him, "The New York Times made a terrible mistake in this story, and I demand a retraction. In the story, you said that I was erratic in my decisions and in my sentencing. It should be erotic, not erratic." Duffy turned and left, and the fellow breathed a sigh of relief. And since this is the election season, and since even if it wasn't, all we hear about is politics, I was reminded of a story which probably is apocryphal, but who knows. Out in the Old West, in the 19th century, the penalty was death if you stole horses. They would hang you. So this young fella was in his early 20s. He was a horse thief, and he got caught stealing a couple of horses. He was tried and sentenced to death by hanging. And they did these things publicly in the town square in those years. And so the judge who had presided over the trial was presiding at the execution of the sentence. And the judge announced to the crowd that the condemned man is given 5 minutes to speak before he's executed if he wishes to. He can say anything he wants. And in the audience was this flannel-mouthed, loud-mouthed, phony politician who waves his hand frantically in the audience. And he yells up to the stage where the gallows were, "Will the defendant waive his 5 minutes?" The condemned man sort of scratches his head, thinks about it, and says, "Well, I'll waive, but hang me first." Well, I'm truly honored to be the recipient of this Deo et Patriae award, which is being given to me tonight. My life has been really a wonderful one. I had great parents, and I have had for 67 years a beautiful, faithful, and loving wife, Diane, who is here with us tonight. And in spite of what Bill Crago said, I know I'm no easy guy to live with after 67 years. God blessed me with a good and interesting series of jobs before I got the best job in the world, which is being a federal judge. It really is. Judge Radji will tell you that. She was a district judge first. Judge Cotel will tell you that, who is here also. And anyhow, when President Reagan appointed me, which was 40 years ago last week, I had become, as I said, a member of a great board and someone with one of the greatest jobs, if not the greatest, in the country. And one of the highlights of my very fortunate life was my career and my 4 years at Regis High School. At Regis, there were two men who, in my memory, stand out. They were giants. One of them was a lay professor by the name of Harry Kerwin. Mr. Kerwin was a graduate of Regis himself, Holy Cross, and after graduating from Holy Cross, that summer he was stricken with polio, and he was crippled. And in spite of that, he led, for a man who was crippled, a remarkable and pretty normal life. And the second man was the then principal of Regis, Father Charles Taylor. Father Taylor was a remarkable principal, and the school really prospered under him. And we had great basketball teams in those years, too. And Father Taylor went on to be on the faculty and was a leading member of the faculty up at Fordham University. He was a great Jesuit. And without Father Taylor and Harry Kerwin, I don't think I would have ever made it through the 4 years at Regis. In 1943, when I started in September, there were 135 of us, small class. 73 graduated. In those years, the attrition rate was terrifying. Fortunately, that's changed, and now we graduate over 90%, I'm told, which is a wonderful, wonderful improvement. So it was great. As great as the school was, it's even better. And I'm sure it will continue to improve under Father Tevron. Now, as you know, and as was remarked right at the beginning here, Regis was founded by a wonderful woman who died in 1944. Her name was Julia Murphy Grant. And she remained anonymous after she died even for years until the celebration of the centennial, the 100th anniversary back, I think it was 9 years ago. And the reason she remained anonymous was that was her desire. But I was speaking to Mrs. McCordick the other day, and she told me something I didn't know, which I don't think many of us know. And that is that Mrs. Grant used to occasionally come over to the school unannounced and walk through the school just to make sure everything was going well. I never knew that till Kathy McCordick told me that the other day. In any event, she was a remarkable woman, and she was really a great woman. And the institution she started, Regis High School, certainly has accomplished a lot in its 190 years. We are ranked number 1, not number 2, not in the top 10. We are ranked number 1 among all the Catholic boys' schools in the United States. Now that's not something that I made up. That's a fact. That's incredible. Number 1. Think of how many Catholic high schools there are in the United States, and we're ranked number 1 of all the boys' schools in the United States. And the last 3 presidents of Fordham University, Father Murray, Father Joe O'Hare, a dear friend, and the immediate past president of Fordham are all Regis men. And how I can block on his name, I didn't even write it down because I know it so well. He was a classmate of yours. Father Joseph McShane. I'm embarrassed I blocked on his name. A senior moment, I'm going to be 94 in 3 weeks. But in any event, those 3 men really did a great job up at Fordham. And as I think you know, Joe O'Hare won and was awarded this great honor that I received tonight from you back a few years ago. And so the Deo and Patriae award is named after the motto of Regis High School, for God and for country. That's the motto of our school. And students at Regis are so fortunate because they are taught to think logically and clearly And this ensures our ability to excel as adults in business, in medicine, in law, and in other professions and positions. We learn the true meaning of loyalty and friendship and the tremendous value of religion. You can't make somebody religious, but you can teach them the importance of it and the value of it. And Regis certainly does that. When I talk about loyalty, I have a silly example that does sort of show you how people are loyal to Regis. My wife Diane and I have one daughter who is a registered nurse and who was working tonight at the hospital she works in. She couldn't get off down in Baltimore, Maryland, and she lives down there with her husband and our two grandsons. When she was going to Dominican Academy, which is about 20 blocks south of Regis, she was a cheerleader at Dominican. She was a cheerleader for Xavier of all places. Regis was playing Xavier in basketball, and they got the girls to cheerlead that day, that night it was, for Xavier against Regis. And our daughter Marie was going out with the older brother of the captain of the team. The older brother had graduated the year before, and she was going out with the older brother. And the younger brother, who was my law clerk, who's seated over there in the front row, Mike Martin. Mike he was the captain of the team. And there was Marie cheerleading vociferously for Xavier, which troubled me terribly. And I rooted better for Regis, and Mike played better than Xavier, so we beat Xavier by 1 point. And that's, as I said, a simple example and of loyalty, but it gives you an idea of how strong the feeling is for Regis. To root against your own daughter is tough work. So, and the friendships, I guess people make friends no matter where they go to school, but the friendships that you make at Regis last literally for life. There was a recipient of your award, back I think it was in 1968. The program that has his name in it was James McGarry. Jim, I think, got this Deo at Patriae Award in 1968. We used to have lunch 6 or 7 times a year, right up until about a month before he died. We had a lunch date. He was in the hospital, and then he died. That gives you one idea of how, when you make a friend at Regis, it's a friend literally for life. There was a couple that I was the best man at their wedding, and we were the godparents of their oldest boy. They both have passed away. But the oldest boy, the son, calls about 3 or 4 times a year. He always calls just before Christmas and around the 4th of July. All those 2 times always, just to make sure that Diane and I are well. And that gives you an idea, or gives me an idea of the friendships that you have, and now they carry on at Regis. Mrs. Grant was one wise woman to have created and maintained for years this wonderful institution. And we are so fortunate to have graduated from it and to have gone there. Father Devron, Father Bender, and those who are running Regis today, and those who ran it in the past, the Jesuits who did it and do it. They have dedicated and continue to dedicate their lives. And Father Bender, Father Devron, believe me, we appreciate it, because we know what a tremendous job you do and have done here. And I thank you both, and I thank you too on behalf of my fellow alumni. And I thank you personally, and I thank your predecessors and your colleagues for all the wonderful things you've done and do for Regis. And I thank my wonderful wife of 67 years, if I mentioned, for having put up with me and being so loyal and loving for these years. It ain't easy living with a federal judge. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Judge Keenan. That was unbelievably amazing. Thank you very, very much for your heartfelt remarks. Now, please join me in welcoming our president, Reverend Christopher J. Denmark.
Maureen already did a great job welcoming Judge Keenan, your guest, so I won't repeat that. But I know there are so many, especially lawyers here, who were mentored by you over the years, and they're here to honor you as we are. So we're so grateful that all of you are in the room. There is another special guest I'd like to welcome, and that is our new principal, Mr. Charlie Hines, and his wife, Erin Melly, who are, I believe, over here somewhere. If we could ask you to No, Judge, you spoke about loyalty, and we are blessed by the loyalty in this room and the generosity that so many of you have expressed in your gifts to Regis. So I just want to thank you for your generosity and for the ways in which that impulse and that inspiration that was a part of the founding family continues to animate each of you to make this tuition-free education possible. I'm so grateful to you. And before we leave, Judge, I just do want to give you the gift that inducts you into this wonderful group of the awardees of the Deo Patriae Award. We're grateful that you grace us with your presence this evening, and that your lovely wife Diane is here, and so many others who are here to pay tribute to you. Thank you. God bless. Just like to thank Maureen Berry and all of her team who have done such a great job in putting together a wonderful evening for all of us. God bless and have a great evening.
Thank you, Father Limmer. Again, many thanks to all of you for joining us and for your continued support. I invite you to move back into the reception room. The bar is still open. The food is still being served. So I look forward to seeing you all outside, and enjoy the rest of the evening.